Everyone, welcome to this week's video. Just a quick message to say thank you so much to everyone who has followed us, subscribed, liked, commented, shared, and told their friends and family about us. We really appreciate your support so far. We love doing the podcast, and we're looking forward to doing many more in the future. If you want to find us, all of our socials will be on the screen somewhere. I haven't decided where I'm putting them yet. I'll do it after I've recorded the video. And yeah, enjoy the video this week, and we'll catch you at the next one. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Yet Another LARP podcast with me, Mark, my partner in crime, Matt, over in the far corner. And today we have Sam AKA Alfmund joining us to talk about religion. Empire LARP religion, specifically. Yes. We have to put the disclaimer on just in case. But welcome, Sam. Thank you very much for coming on today. We're very excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It should be a really good one. I think we said at the end of the last one that Matt and myself are very rubbish when it comes to being religious. Devoutly religious at our Empire LARP events, so it'll be good for you to get us in line, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whip us in a shape.
Yeah, definitely. What have we got in store?
Well, we are talking about the religion, or the main religion, I guess. The only religion I know, main religion, the non-heretic one. I don't know.
Yeah, the accepted religion.
Yeah, the accepted religion of the Empire. And that is the way. And we've got super expert Sam /Alfmund to talk about it. What we normally do, customary to. Oh, it's also obviously it's worth saying. Sam's my favourite Birch Hoarder as well out of the group. No. Yes. So we've got Sam on. So yeah, really. I guess we want to sort of have an introduction, Sam. Who are you? How did you get into LARP? And yeah. Wow.
Yeah. As established, I am Sam, the Sam.
The Sam.
I guess I'm not the Sam. You have your own Sam.
We do.
Yeah, but he's not here right now, so you're the Sam right now.
Valid.
You're the Sam in the stream.
I play Alfmund. They're a CallioPea, so they're in Wintermark, and they are a Stormcrow of Ambition. Which I guess is why I'm here as the person that knows about religion. I like to yell about fire a lot, but we'll probably get around to that.
We'll get to that.
Cross that bridge.
Yeah, I got into LARP at university. My first year flatmate convinced me to join the role-playing society. At the time, mostly it was a joint tabletop and live-action role-playing society, and I joined mostly for the tabletop, and then slowly got convinced to start taking up the LARP. We did linear LARP, where you start at one end of a wood and go from encounter to encounter in a linear fashion. And then people at the society were like, "You should try out this Empire thing," and the rest, as they say, is history.
I've never heard of that before. Linear LARP.
Yeah, it's more directed. It's not actually for me. I didn't enjoy it so much as I do Empire. So where Empire is quite sandboxy and you can just dive in and find game, it's more you go to this encounter and you talk to an NPC and they say something attacked the village, and then you go to the next encounter and you fight some wolves, and from that and gather clues and go from one to. I guess it's more like D&D than.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
It makes me think of like old linear RPG games. Actually, I guess it's probably similar.
But I guess, like Sam said, a bit like D&D. It could be quite a logical step to go from like having D&D sort of structured in a way. It's sort of led in a certain direction when you're playing, and then you just do it in person. It's cool.
Yeah. What I like about your description there as well is that you said you started out with a tabletop and slowly was basically forced into doing the role play.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've been made to go to Empire.
No. I don't even. Yeah. before even coming to Empire, I did some smaller, like standalone single events that I kind of left out of that story, like Circa Regna Tonat, which was a Arthurian sort of knight tourney and stuff. I think that's why people suggested Empire to me, because I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you do anything else other than Empire currently?
These days, it's just Empire. I think that's enough of a money sink for me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go. That's interesting, because so far all of the people that have got into LARP that I know personally, we've all sort of roughly found it in the same kind of way, in that we've seen YouTube videos on it and just taken the leap to play. So it's cool that you found sort of a slightly alternate route into it. Yeah. Real.
Cool.
Yeah. So today specifically, you mentioned that you have been brought on here to talk about the mechanic in Empire LARP for the religious aspect of it, which is called the Way.
Yeah.
So I think it's only right that we have a little chat about what that is, and I guess what each of us understand it to be. That will be very short from me and Matt, but
I don't know. You might be surprised. You might know a bit more than you thought you did. Perhaps.
possibly. We're gonna have to name the virtues.
Oh, I could name one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them.
I think we did it in the intro to LARP video, like the first.
If you let me
video.
get the wiki up, I'll name them all.
I can already see in the reflection of your eyes that you're on the wiki.
No.
Well, then who's going to do it? Sam, are you going to prove to us that you are actually in the know
Got
about
my
Should
keep.
Should we say, well, if you don't mind, Sam, if you explain sort of what the way is, and then we can cross the virtues there, because they're pretty important when it comes to the way, isn't it? So.
Yeah. So the way is well, to talk about the way, you have to talk about the Empire, and like you've probably covered this in previous videos, but the Empire exists as a collection of nations to ultimately bring the way to, well, the world. The whole Empire is a theocracy. Well, to some degree, actually. Yeah, I guess it has an empress or emperor. But the religion is the core function of the Empire, and that religion is the way. It is founded upon a number of doctrines, which may be worth going into later. But the core principle is that you have to try and be virtuous. There are 7 of those. Ambition, best, obviously. And then you have loyalty, wisdom, prosperity, vigilance. Oh no.
Pride.
Pride, that's the one.
Do you say loyalty as well?
I think I said loyalty. This is the problem. I start to.
Right, we need to count our fingers, don't we? If my fingers will be picked up by the camera, they're not going to be.
Ambition.
Ambition.
Pride, prosperity, vigilance, wisdom, loyalty, courage.
There it is.
There we go. 7.
7. If you're virtuous, you are in life. Then when you die as a human, I should say, you pass into what's called the labyrinth, and so a common symbol of the way is the labyrinth. Well, not you, your soul, and then your soul is ultimately traversed through the labyrinth, or it traverses through the labyrinth, and then you are reincarnated in a new life, unless you were super incredibly virtuous, at which point you might become an exemplar or a paragon, which is the ultimate fate of all human souls, I guess.
So yeah, you said about, I guess, if you're being really virtuous in life, it basically helps you get through the labyrinth easier, right, and quicker into rebirth. Whereas, I guess if you're really unvirtuous, you might be lost wandering the labyrinth for quite a while. I don't know. Haven't done it myself. Can't say.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Still time.
But yeah, also to mention like paragons and exemplars, which are really cool. So if we, I don't know,
Talk about paragons and exemplars.
I don't know if anyone springs to mind you want to mention.
Oh well, my principal paragon is Tian. They were one of the earliest known paragons. Basically, the way it works is, the Synod, which is our equivalent of the Church, I guess, has identified now that there are a number of signs that are consistent between the different paragons and exemplars we know through history. We've determined that they are paragons and exemplars because people haven't had past life visions of them, which is a whole other thing.
Okay.
And so my principal paragon is Tian. They were a noble of sorts, I guess. They lived a noble life, but their people, their kin, struggled. They were struggling. They were cold. They were hungry. Their brother was like, "You don't worry about them. You've got luxury, and you don't need to worry about the troubles of the lowly folk." But Tian said no, and went on a great pilgrimage. Climbed a mountain to bring literal fire back from the sun, because the mountain was that tall and they could touch the sun, burning their hands in the process to bring the fire to their people to keep them warm. This would be classed as a miracle, which is one of the signs. It was a sign of benevolence, which is another of the signs. That sort of thing. Kethri and Goodwalder, also good exemplars.
So would you say that the exemplars and paragons are sort of these people that you can use to help guide yourself in virtue in a way,
they're sort of
or
legendary,
inspire you?
but not legendary. I guess legendary, not so much mythical.
Yeah.
But people that existed. They're, I guess, the closest thing in today's. They'd be like saints and apostles, or saints, I should say. They did epic things, and their stories are inspiring to us now. How we can in turn do epic things.
So could you say like certain you maybe get groups of people that will like saints follow a certain paragon, for example?
That's an interesting question. It's one that I've, not such an expert, had to ask other people, because it's complicated, because while we hold them up as great examples, exemplars of their respective virtues, we don't worship them. Just try to live by their example, I guess. So you do get groups of people that try and live by their example. That's what I do.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
I think that answers the question.
I had a brief question about Paragon, because I know very, very little about Paragons and Exemplars. Do we have any players that have achieved Paragon status in recent history?
Paragon status, I'm not sure about. I am aware of Skywise Vikana, who is an orc who is a living exemplar, which is quite an achievement.
All right.
I think very early in the game, there may be a couple of other player characters who are recognised as exemplars.
What about Cora Holdfast, recognised as an exemplar of loyalty in 379?
That's some excellent recall there.
I read it in a book in the Anvil Library, and it just... no. So here's another question. Oh yeah, 379 is player years. So that sounds like that was a player then, by the looks of it.
But yeah, because what we know, 384.
Yeah.
Occasionally we do recognise NPCs from history as exemplars too, just because they were people of note within history without necessarily being formally recognised.
Yeah.
So that you could go. That's sort of quite an interesting sort of historical side, sort of historical research side of the game, where you as a priest or follower of the way, whatever, you could look into like sort of historic players or people, sorry, and look at getting them that status, which is quite an interesting thing to.
Yeah, exactly. I know a few people who are trying to do that.
Yeah,
but I can't
that
say
sounds
more than
cool.
that because
No, that's fine.
that'll be find
that
out
sounds
in play.
Yeah, well, very interesting. Very interesting.
I've put a picture up of the labyrinth behind us, so
Yeah,
people
but
can.
the problem is that's
visualise.
cheating because people could work out the route now
Oh no!
Yeah,
ahead of time. Mm.
just take a map with you into the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Draw it at the back of your hand. Yeah.
Who needs
Yeah.
virtue when you have maps?
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Ambition. Right. So
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's a good point actually. Ambition is all about if you want to do the thing, and making it unnecessarily hard for yourself isn't more ambitious than just doing it the simple way. So drawing a map of the labyrinth on the back of your hand probably would be pretty ambitious.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a shot. You're learning it here first, folks.
Well, it does raise a question of in what kind of form do you take after you pass on and enter the labyrinth? Are you a spirit, or do you look as you were? Because if so, you could just have some scarring done that looks like the labyrinth, and then that's your map.
I reckon it's your. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Dare I even say? I don't
the
know.
doctrine of the labyrinth states that it's a place of pure spirit, and flesh and blood may not enter. So,
Because that's the thing. If you lost an arm in battle, for example, it'd be really annoying, or a leg. Hop around the local labyrinth.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
Or if you were blown up, then that's going to be rough.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's
Rhino,
spirits.
like, War Rhino rocks up and thirdens you and just kills
no,
over
yeah, you don't want
what's
that.
underneath it. Yeah, like.
Well, hopefully, war rhinos don't get into the labyrinth. I assume they don't.
They do not.
Yeah.
It is human
Proof they
only.
don't, please. Yeah, exactly. Human only, which I guess goes on to another thing, which I guess we could talk about now.
Yeah.
The way, obviously, you've now described the talk about the way, how cool and interesting it is. However, it is sort of targeted at humans. And
yes,
I put in the question as non-humans because the Wikipedia describes it as non-humans, but we're going to talk about orcs, right?
Yeah.
Because
it's the only ones it's largely to so far.
Yeah, exactly. So the orcs don't really have the labyrinth.
No, so the orcs have their own doctrine, and in case anyone wasn't aware, I'm not an orc. So I don't know this perhaps as well as others. I know it is a source of some contention in the field, so if it's something that interests you, it might be interesting to go and try and learn more about it in character. But my general understanding is that orc souls, rather than passing through the labyrinth, they have what's called the Howling Abyss, and unlike human souls, which pass through the labyrinth and are reborn, orcs either cross the abyss or they don't. And if either way, there is no rebirth. If they don't cross the abyss, that's it. They fall into the abyss. Sucks to be them. If they cross the abyss, they become what's called an ancestor, and the voices of orc ancestors can then be heard by orcs that are living, and the ancestors sort of influence the orcs in this, ancestral manner. And specifically the Way, or the doctrines of the Way that centre around orcs, are focused on that the Howling Abyss exists, and that if an orc soul crosses the Howling Abyss, it becomes an ancestor and can guide and advise living orcs. And then you have the doctrine of the ancestors, which is basically human souls, by being virtuous, pass through the labyrinth quicker. Orc souls, by committing great deeds, have a better chance of crossing the Howling Abyss. Now, great deeds covers a wide range of things, not just virtue, just that virtuous deeds could be one of the things that helps orcs cross the abyss. And if a virtuous orc did virtuous great deeds, they would therefore become a virtuous ancestor that would then influence living orcs to be more virtuous, if that makes sense.
Kind of. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So someone has just pinged him. Can orcs potentially become paragons or exemplars of the Way?
Well, So, as I say, Skywise Raikana is a living
Oh,
exemplar
sorry, you did say, yeah.
of, I think, wisdom.
Mhm.
And like I say, they can be virtuous. It's just that they don't. Yeah, I guess they could become exemplars and paragons.
I guess
they're
this
quite
is the
new to
game of, having the Way and the Orcs
Yeah.
in the same empire, right? That's the game, how everyone's got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But no, that's interesting. Yeah, so yeah, the Orcs obviously, which is funny looking at Orc Brief of being sort of, wanting to be part of something bigger and really like into the Empire, and yet the main core of the Empire, the Way, isn't something that they touch into, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah, the Orcs are obviously the Imperial Orcs are quite new to the Empire, what
Yeah.
with previously being slaves or barbarians. And therefore are quite new to the Way and to virtue. And thus, there aren't as many recognised, although they may exist, but we haven't been looking for them for as long, existing Orc paragons or exemplars of virtue, because the Orcs are so new to the Way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting. Yeah, it's quite a big difference, sort of, between the two races, I guess.
We have had a question that I think is probably relevant to talk about now, because we're talking about Orcs and the Way. If the Orcs don't have the maze, do they still follow the Way and the virtues?
So yes, as I say, the idea is that the Imperial Orcs try and do virtuous great deeds, so they become virtuous ancestors.
Yes.
It's like almost like a blend of the virtues of the Way, sort of bleeding into the Orcs.
Yeah. So you have
tradition.
like the best way to contrast it is to talk about like the Jotun, for example, do great deeds centered around warfare and honor, but specifically honor-bound warfare. Equally, the Grendel may try and do great deeds of amassing wealth and status, whereas the Imperial Orcs generally are trying to do virtuous great deeds. I think the Imperial Orcs, don't quote me on this, do have. So the Imperial Orcs have shamans who interpret the will of the ancestors, but you do get Imperial Orc priests, to my knowledge.
I don't know, but yeah, that rings a bell. The fact that there are.
Isn't the Cardinal of the Way
Imperial? Yeah, I think we were looking at Orc stuff the other day, Matt. I think there is a. Is it shaman? Is it the archetype?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is priestly functions.
Also, going back to that question of what do they still follow the Way and the virtues, you could almost say that to be an Imperial citizen, they need to follow the Way and the virtues. So, again, the Way's not necessarily linked to their afterlife. However, they're still Imperial citizens, so they're still gonna sort of follow that thing.
Yeah, and Gaspar's in the chat has said it's preachers. Is the
preachers? Yeah. I was literally just going to search out now on the Orc thing to see what they do, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then I put down. We were literally just talking about this before we went live about Liao's effects on humans and non-humans. So I guess we could talk about the Orcs first because that's easy.
Yes.
And then maybe we could talk about sort of what Liao's used for.
Yeah. So I'll talk about what Liao is to give some context.
Yeah.
Liao is a substance that the civil service produces from a herb or a plant-based thing called venom. That is used by priests of the Way to create auras and things. For orcs can't use Liao. If an orc imbibes Liao, they become dizzy and sick, and it's rather unpleasant for them. And if you can't equally put auras on orcs like you can on human souls.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we saw that true Liao makes them potentially even worse than dizzy
Really?
and sick.
Yeah, so truly owl is
Yeah.
basically, I can't remember the exact statistic, but every 100, 500, however many it is, 1,000 doses of Liao ends up being ultra pure and special, and is true Liao, and it can either be used to create auras that are very powerful and last indefinitely. Equally, it can be used to have a past life vision, which I mentioned before, where a character imbibes true Liao with the help of another priest and has a vision of who they were in one of their past lives before that soul passed through the labyrinth. But because it's more potent, hypothetically, if a orc took it, it could kill. But we've never given it to an orc to try.
There you go.
So, yeah.
There's an RP opportunity for any orcs listening.
Yeah. Very risky. So, well, yeah, you spoke about, so Liao, I guess you could say Liao's used, and forgetting true Liao, but Liao's used for like priest skills and stuff, right? So
Yeah.
we're doing priest stuff like, you're probably the best person to rattle off priest stuff, so I'll let you do it.
So Liao is used for pretty much all of the priest skills. I say pretty much all of the priest skills. Dedication, anointing, testimony, hallowing, consecration, exorcism, excommunication.
Yeah.
Of all of those. Generally creating auras either on people, places, or things. Or removing said auras. Is the long and short of it. And by doing that, priests can help give lay people, non-priests, or just anyone, even other priests, guidance on the path. If someone, for example, to use ambition, came to me saying, I want to do this thing, I want to take back my land from the barbarians, but I just keep doubting myself. People keep telling me that it's foolhardy or that it won't be successful, but I care strongly about this. Then I can give them an aura of ambition that says, ignore what other people may say. You want to do this. Set your mind to it. Don't listen to naysayers, and therefore inspire them to be more ambitious. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Matt, do you think we should quickly run through? I know we listed them, but maybe talk about each of the virtues.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
a little bit more.
So ambition, I feel like. Well, yeah. Let's. Well, if you don't mind, Sam, you maybe talk about each virtue, and maybe if we will do we could almost have like a little scenario, for example, like you've just done there with ambition. Like someone's come to you asking the priest of ambition, and you've given. Maybe let's try to do something like that, but with all the other virtues.
Okay.
So
yes.
I guess who wants to pick the first one?
Well, if we want examples of stuff, I mean, we as a whole generally, I think if we were going to say that we follow anything to even a small amount, I think prosperity is probably the one that we I was going to say make use of, but it's not that. We always have prosperity in mind when we're doing stuff. Obviously, we want the hall to thrive, but we try and do what we can for at least Wintermark as well.
I think prosperity is an interesting one because it's not just about having a load of cash in your pockets. It can be anything. You could say it is money, but also it's experience, and it's help. Well, I would say maybe it's like you said, helping Wintermark or helping people in a way is being prosperous. Going and helping people out and stuff. I probably would say it's not just about having a pocket full of money.
I think prosperity, to break it down into its most easily basic understandable terms, I'd say is economy. Rather than just having a load of money and hoarding it, that's not very prosperous. Better to have money, spend it on something, buy some mead, drink that mead, trade that, give some of that mead to a friend in exchange for them giving you a favor later. It's the passing back and forth of
The spreading
stuff.
of
wealth.
Yeah.
But wealth in very loose terms. But also
Yeah.
enjoying the fruits of your labours is one of the tenets of prosperity, I should say.
you could almost say that the farmer who toils to bring in the harvest and enjoys their bounty. Yeah, you can
Absolutely.
maybe.
Mate, you have been studying. I'm very impressed with your certain knowledge for everything that's coming up tonight.
It's not how I normally would say it either, but I've structured it in a way that is more digestible. It's prosperity.
The only other one I could think of really, well, I guess we have a priest covering courage, and I always forget what Bailey's character is, but I'm sure it was loyalty at one point.
It was. It was. Oh no! Oh yeah. So Katie's courage. Yeah.
Eldrick's loyalty.
Eldrick's loyalty.
Yeah.
Probably. So, yeah. I guess. Well, should we quickly rattle through some of the other virtues whilst we're here?
Yeah.
For fun. Sam, you pick one. You pick one, and you.
Goodness.
You say something.
We can go over courage since you brought that one up first.
Yeah.
Courage, I guess, a lot of the virtues, now I think about it, tend to get misunderstood one way or another. Courage isn't just about the battlefield. Obviously, it can be, but it's much that as the courage to take any action. Basically.
Yeah,
I think
just the fighting a battle. It could be courage to make a step to make maybe if it's something like to make a purchase or something like that. The courage to stand up and run for a position or something like that, or even courage to stand up in the middle of the moot and talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say the courage to stand up and have your voice be heard, especially in the moot. That's the first thing I think of when I think of courage, because I have done it once and hated it. No, it was horrendous.
Yeah.
I tell you, I felt like I was shouting, like the loudest I've ever shouted. And someone, when I was talking, someone shouted, "Speak up, we can't hear you."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a.
And I was like, I literally can't do this any louder than right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely courage. Yeah, but I think like you said, Sam, I think a lot of it, probably all the virtues are sort of misunderstood in a certain way. Like again, like prosperity, everyone thinks, it's just about getting money. Well, it's not. Courage is just about going out and fighting. Well, no, it's not. And interesting. Ambition as well.
Yeah. Ambition is people do tend to roughly grasp what ambition is, thankfully for me. Although I would say ambition is far more about the doing a thing than having a thing. A lot of people come to me saying, I want to have this. And I'm like, okay, but when you have it, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
The good thing about Empire's game design is all of the virtues are ultimately designed, I think, to make good game. They encourage you to go out and interact with other players and do interesting things that's going to ripple out and affect other players. That's what I find really cool about it.
What about pride?
Pride.
Because to me, pride has always been.
Pride's an interesting one.
In the real world, it's one of the 7 deadly sins, isn't it? Traditionally. Yeah. So it was strange for me coming into a setting where pride is, celebrated. More so in some nations than others. Dawn?
Yeah. Pride is, I guess, about cleaving to your beliefs, to what you stand for. Embracing who you are and what you show to the world, I should say. probably how I would best describe it. Pride is probably the one that I know the least about, if anything.
Yeah, I don't really. I wouldn't really know how to utilize it in the field at the moment.
Yeah. Pride, I guess, yeah, maybe it's best to try and come up with an example. Pride would be, well, it's ironically to use the name of a different virtue. It's having courage in your convictions, I would say. Like, if you believe that this course is correct or that you are right on this, then standing up and saying that, and being prepared to get blowback on it, but just say, I believe this, I'm going to do this. Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
turncoating the whole time and flip flopping your
Yeah.
beliefs. Yeah, if you stick to it, I guess you could say it's risk, but also reward in a way. You know, it's again virtuous.
Oh, true. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, going on to another virtue, which I think's one of the more interesting ones, is wisdom.
Yeah.
Because wisdom's an interesting one, right? Because I've just been reading the wiki, and it's not what I would expect to read from it. It's a bit more confusing in a way.
Interesting.
Like I always took the opinion, like I guess general opinion of wisdom is it's not knowing everything, it's knowing you don't know everything. You know.
Yeah.
Very wise.
That is one of the tenets of wisdom, that wisdom knows all knowledge is incomplete.
Yeah, so I guess to be wise, or to follow the path of wisdom is an interesting one, because I don't know, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but it feels quite open. Maybe all the virtues are quite open, but I feel like there's a bit of wiggle room for a certain take on it. Well, I don't know.
Wisdom is very, in my experience, useful across the board, I guess, is the thing. Like, if I'm, in terms of the tenets, like being succinct in your message and understanding that you don't know everything, and take everything with a pinch of salt, etc. Like, I would still do that as an ambition, like as my character, even though I'm dedicated to ambition, because ultimately I understand that people don't want to hear me rattle on for hours about something when I could just say X, Y, Z. So I guess it's probably the most accessible in that regard, as you say.
Yeah. I try. I feel like my current character tries to follow wisdom. I think he possibly follows prosperity more, but he tries. The main one's meant to be wisdom, but maybe slips a bit. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, they all are.
Little wisdom image from the wiki there.
Yes, I believe that's meant to be a CallioPea.
Yay.
There you go. Representing the nation.
I like the prosperity one. Vigilance. So I think we've literally got. Yeah, I think we've got vigilance, and what else have we got left? Loyalty. Yeah. Well, let's talk about vigilance whilst we're here.
So people commonly misinterpret vigilance as being perceptive, like watch out for the banana peel by your foot. And vigilance isn't about that. It's more about being aware of threats and which, now I say that out loud, sounds very similar. But
it's, for me, vigilance is probably the hardest one for me to interpret personally.
I understand what it is, but putting it into words that don't contradict itself.
It's fair to say it is partly perception, though. It's fair to say that in a way.
I think all of the virtues have their thing that is most obvious when you first think about them. Courage, going out to fight, blah, blah, blah. That's the first thing that I think a lot of people would immediately come to, but then they all have their own hidden depth.
Icebergs. That's what they
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Did
I
you?
think for vigilance, like you'd initially you would think, like you said, don't slip on the banana peel, but I think it could stretch from anything to being a shrewd business person and knowing which deals to avoid and which deals to look
Yeah.
out for and stuff like that. That's how
Would you
I
say
More
potentially
being-
vigilance working a bit like sort of understanding consequences to actions? So if you were going to go
Yeah.
do something, understanding there's going to be a reaction to that, you could argue vigilance because if you were just bounding into something, like for example, if you marched into the military meeting or no, you march into sort of like the throne room in a senate and whip out your sword, it's vigilant to know you'll probably get shanked by the guards. If a lack of vigilance, perhaps,
Yeah.
to not see that being a possibility. Potentially, I don't know. That's me throwing a weird scenario out there, but
Yeah.
I guess you could say is seeing those sort of.
I think as well, you could, I guess, be a patron of vigilance by looking ahead in the future and I guess planning accordingly. So to use the military game, for example, having well thought out tactics in advance is potentially an act of vigilance. Because you're preparing for future.
A vigilant general considers supply lines and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
For example,
One of my other favourite exemplars, Berechiah, is an exemplar of vigilance, and their whole shtick was: if you know someone is a threat to the way, if someone is a heretic or a blasphemer or an idolater, why let them stick around and await trial, etc., when you know that the trial is ultimately going to execute them anyway? Just be judge, jury, executioner in that regard. Because the vigilant thing to do is to understand that the longer they are a threat, the more threatening they are.
Okay, yeah. I guess that's a good argument. Is to be vigilant is to understand the or try to understand the whole situation, sort of thing. It's interesting. And that leaves us with the last one, which is loyalty. I think.
Yeah, I
think so. I was about to say, I hope you guys have been keeping track of which ones we've talked about, because I have not.
Loyalty is loyalty can be both to other people and to yourself. Which again, there's a lot of overlap between all the virtues. So loyalty to yourself can be similar to pride, I guess. But it's about taking action. It can be with words, but it's about banding together with your fellows and knowing your heart.
I think it's potentially one of the easier virtues to understand, because loyalty essentially is loyalty, isn't it? Whether that's, like you said, to yourself, to your band of friends, to the empire, to your nation. So that's possibly one of the easier ones. More natural.
When your mate says, "I need help doing this," that you're gonna help them.
Yeah. I think as well, for me, on the less linear path to trying to be closer to loyalty within the game setting, I would imagine something like staying true to your own goals. It kind of blurs a bit with ambition, but if you've got a goal and then you are faced with the option of sacking it off or continuing down a harder road, then the loyal option would be to see it through to the end.
You could say it almost links in with pride in that way as well. Having that sort of loyalty and pride.
Yeah. And then in the end, you'll prosper. See, they're all connected.
The way.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot already, which is great.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I've put down sort of how does we probably covered a lot of this anyway, but how does the way affect me? Question mark. As in priests. So if you were a priest, how does the way affect you? Well, I guess you're going out and preaching the way. You've got your virtue. You know that you're guiding citizens. You can do your priestly skills. And then I guess the average Joe I've got written down here. How
Yeah.
does the way affect you? I guess, and then this is the other side of it is I'll use a personal story. I had it E1 last year ahead of Senate elections. I what was it? Was it dedication? No, I don't know. I'm asking Mark, but
Sorry, what was it? What was it you?
what Bailey Eldrick did to me.
Oh, I mean, don't phrase it like that because that makes it sound like he's stabbed you in the back when you weren't looking.
It's not like priestly.
Um,
Give me
was it
guide.
anointing?
It might have been anointing, yeah.
Did he give you an aura?
I think so.
Yeah, it sounds like anointing.
Yeah,
it was meant to sort of give me clarity and stuff in my sort of election thing, which was really cool. So I guess as an average Joe who isn't a priest, I had something coming up, and I wanted that sort of inspiration, that help. So I a priest seeked me, but I seeked a priest, and I got that help through a role-playing effect, which was cool.
Chat have confirmed it was an anointing, and you had a personal aura put on you.
I did. Which, yeah. So I guess for the average sort of citizen out there, there's that going on. Also, is it anointing that helps with cancelling the effects of miasma weakness and stuff? Is that anointing or is that dedications?
I think that's anointing. Right.
So,
they changed the rules for this recently. Well, I think they clarified the rules for this recently. But yeah, I believe personal was like anointing.
So
help you overcome.
Yeah, I guess you could say a priest is very handy to soldiers going into a battlefield where they know like weakness is about, because so that's another common thing you could see priests doing as well in a maybe a way.
I think there's a difference between like weakness, which is a mechanical, you can't use hero points anymore, and a negative role-playing effect, which is a role-play thing. So
I'm thinking mechanic. Yeah, so I'm talking about the weakness. So like I think a while ago there's a battlefield against the Druge where they had like miasma everywhere, and it gave everyone weakness when they went onto the battlefield.
Oh, so that would be like a consecration, like an area of effect thing. You mean?
Hang on.
The weakness thing was so basically they were seeing priests before the battle getting anointed so they could cancel that effect.
Right. Okay. So it will depend on what virtue, because I think each virtue has a different auras you can put on people.
Yeah, so I think each virtue has its own auras that give you different role-playing effects, but they still all work mechanically as a source of spiritual strength.
Right.
Yes, I was anointed in wisdom. The chat's just reminded me. Yeah, it was wisdom. I thought it was wisdom, but then I was like, but Eldrick.
I just don't think that weakness is a.
It was while he was a wisdom priest.
You can't use hero points or magic stuff.
Yes, but it's a mechanical effect rather than a role-playing effect. So I don't think actually anointing lets you ignore weakness.
It might not be anointing then. It might be dedication or something. I'm thinking of. It's one of them. It's one of them, and it is a legit thing. I just don't know which one it is.
Okay.
Tune in next time to find out which one it was.
It was another like useful thing for sort of the average citizen to seek out a priest.
Certainly, if there are like because the Druge, for example, like to use fear tactics, and if you are subject to a fear aura, if you have an anointing, then you can ignore the fear aura. Is my understanding of certainly that bit. Bizarrely, despite being a fighty priest, where the two meet is actually not my strongest suit.
While we're talking about anointing, etc., do we want to cover the various things that a priest can do. In light detail, not in great
We
detail.
already sort of spoke about it, but we can do again if you want.
Well, we haven't talked about consecrations.
No.
Yeah, so anointing is on people. I think each virtue has 4 anointings. Consecration, each virtue has 1, and it's on a place. It has to be sort of a defined place, like a tent. It can't be the whole field.
Mhm.
And then you have hallowing, which is on an object. Each virtue has loads of hallowings. And when you hallow something, you also get to give it a name, and you get a nice white ribbon that
Halloween,
looks like
interesting.
an enchantment, even though it's not, which is always fun because you get to give someone the white ribbon. And then
Dedication.
testimony. Yeah, dedication is simply the act of dedicating someone to the path of one of the virtues. But you can also use it to give someone dreams about that virtue, or dreams that are virtue centric to that virtue.
Is dedications only for humans? Or can orcs be dedicated?
So if you tried to dedicate an orc, they'd have the whole sickness thing, is my understanding.
Because they've got a consume. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
But it doesn't mean you can't do it.
You technically can do it.
They'd be dedicated, but
Yeah,
also
you know,
vomiting on you.
Well, it probably wouldn't work. No, it probably wouldn't dedicate
It would.
anyway.
It would work.
No, because they need to take the liao, don't they?
Yeah, they would take the Lao, they'd be dedicated, and then they'd be sick.
No, I feel like they would be sick and ill before they could be dedicated.
I don't think orcs should be dedicated. They can preach a congregation, like a congregation is its own thing, it's the resource, and you decide what your congregation preaches, so you can be a orc preacher with a congregation that preaches ambition, for example. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, because the dedication creates an aura, does it?
Yeah, I think so.
So you could say that only auras are made for those who follow the way or bound to it.
Gaspar said orcs can't gain the RP effect that dedicate gives you. So there you go.
There we go.
Yeah. The ancestor stuff that blocks it.
It must be difficult then to play a preacher.
Yeah, but I guess you could say really a dedication is only, well, more or less an RP effect in a way.
Yeah, dedication does comparatively little. It's just that it unlocks the rest of the skills.
Free skills, yeah.
Orcs cannot be dedicated here on the wiki.
Orcs cannot be dedicated, no.
When you insight, I forgot that one earlier. Insight somebody, you can see what they're dedicated to. Insight is the free skill that lets you see auras, so it sees what anointing someone's under, what their dedication is, etc., and what testimonies they have, which is the free skill that lets you write 2 words on someone's soul, which is always fun.
Oh yeah, words on. So yeah, you can put words on souls, can't you? So am I right in thinking that you could do that on someone who's just crossed the labyrinth, and it could potentially link back to a previous life with words and
we don't know for sure, like hypothetically, because obviously it's on their spirit, and their spirit goes through the labyrinth. Wait, hang on.
There's just no
does not
proof
literally write
cases
words on the aura or soul of the target, rather create a symbol or is interpreted by priest using insight. It's a theory.
There's just no proof of it actually happening, but
it's a commonly held belief.
Yeah, which is interesting. Cool.
You
could have, like you're I don't know, you're just become a citizen. You just back out from the farm. You've gone to Anvil for the first time. You get pounced by priests, and then it's just like oh no, what's that film? That's annoying. With Arnie. I keep thinking Minority Report, and it's not.
Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, it's not that one. Do you know where he's a sleeper? He's an agent, and he gets his mind wiped.
I know. Don't know.
No.
My favourite Arnie film is Jingle All the Way. Also, one of my favourite Christmas films.
It's it had a remake, and it was really good. But basically like that, you're just some young kid, and next thing you know, oh no, your past life you were some like super important person. Wow,
Yeah.
because they could see the symbol spirit.
Yeah.
That film's gonna annoy me. Gonna have to search it.
We'll find out after.
I keep thinking Minority Report, and it's definitely not Minority Report.
No, was he even in that?
No, he wasn't in it. So
No.
I don't know why I'm thinking of Minority Report. But,
Terminator.
Yeah, it's not. It's not that.
I'm not great with my films.
Total Recall. Bingo.
Total Recall.
Doug got
There
it
you
in the
go.
chat.
Thanks, Doug.
Exactly Total Recall. All of a sudden, bang! You wake up and you got past visions and of being some sort of like head of a I don't know. Right. Cool.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Glad we got that.
Then I think you have exorcism, which is the ability to deal with spirits. So that's one that a lot of priests that fight have, because we end up fighting malign spirits and ghosts and things.
Mhm.
Or sometimes, for example, when you, to dip into the magic game a little bit, cast Whispers Through the Black Gate on someone who's been dead a while, it conjures or brings forth a malign spirit instead, and then you have to have priests that can exercise to get rid of it. And I think the only other one we haven't done is excommunication, which...
Yes, which is bad.
Yeah, again, like, the exact nature of what it does is sort of to be proven, but it removes a individual's ability to use any religious skills. So if someone was dedicated to, for example, a false virtue that you didn't want them to continue preaching and continue giving orders to, you would excommunicate them, and then they wouldn't be able to use anointing, hallow, and whatnot. But the belief... Oh, and it also stops you dreaming. The belief is that it may sort of prevent you passing through the labyrinth, but that's not proven.
I'm glad you mentioned something as well. You briefly mentioned false virtues.
Yes.
Which will be a great topic to talk about after the mini break. You mentioned earlier about people being dedicated to false virtues. Didn't realise that was a thing, and that sounds cool. So, is there a set amount of false virtues, or could I just make up a false virtue on the spot and be in trouble?
Now you're asking. I believe there are set false virtues. It's just that they go by lots of names, or that like you might think you're dedicated to a different thing, but ultimately it felt that it can be ascribed to X false virtue. The ones that spring to me off the top of my head would be fear, purity, oh goodness, fear, purity, hatred's the same thing as purity.
Vengeance,
anarchy,
peace, hope.
Yeah.
Further reading.
Kindness.
Yes, anarchy is the same thing as freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. They're all false virtues. They all functionally inhibit your path through the labyrinth, is why they're sort of held up as false virtues. Which isn't to say that, the Empire thinks that peace is a bad thing. Just that peace with a capital P, the virtue, is... which doesn't help a lot, actually. I'll say it out loud.
Could you say that someone can be dedicated to a false virtue in like a completely innocent way? Or would it be like, no, you definitely, like, for example, if I'm like, oh, I believe in the virtue peace because I just don't understand it's, or would you say no, that's, because again, like, peace is a good thing, right?
Yeah, so like you can only, as I think chat has said, you can only get dedicated to a false virtue in play. You can't start with a dedication to a false virtue, and dedication ultimately requires another priest to dedicate you. So you could decide that your character values peace with a capital P. I don't know, we're focusing on peace. It's the one that I understand the least about, but and you might make it your own character goal if you want to play that sort of character, to try and find a priest that could dedicate you to peace, etc. I don't think it's something you fall into necessarily by accident.
So if I paint a scenario, I'm a priest of peace. I'm going to walk around Anvil. I'm going to go, hey, you, sir, over there. Peace is good, right? And they're going to be, oh yeah, peace is great. Yeah. Well, why didn't you try spread peace? You know, why didn't you spread peace? And they'll be like, oh well, of course, peace is great. Yeah. Well, why don't I dedicate you to it? And then all of a sudden, that person can be sort of into a false virtue without really knowing about it.
Well, so
in a way,
yes, that I guess does lead us nicely on to religious crime and the role of inquisitors.
I've done a religious crime.
So you have religious crimes. In that case, it would be. Oh no, I should have prepared this.
Big Matt stole them.
Yeah, stall.
Uh,
I think would it be blasphemy? No, it wouldn't.
I feel like I know where it's heading, and that's lopping off a head in the little square.
Heresy. I believe that'd be
Heresy.
heresy,
It's gotta
which
be.
is
Everything's
actively
heresy.
teaching and promoting false doctrines would be. So the person doing the dedicating to peace would be heresy, and possibly the person that then gets dedicated could go down to heresy.
Some of these false virtues, you could almost trick people into it,
Yeah.
unless they were clued up on the way.
So,
for example, like if someone wasn't really clued up on the way,
I come across freedom quite a lot as an ambition priest because a lot of the freedom. Not freedom auras say like people should be free to pursue whatever dreams and goals they have, which sounds like an ambition thing, but is actually saying like people shouldn't adhere to any rules, structure, whatever, and should instead just do whatever. And that way lies anarchy.
Yeah, if you were virtuous, you could argue that you could go and achieve all your goals through the paths of the virtues.
Yeah,
being a priest. If I was one.
Yeah, absolutely. Anarchy and anarchy is a different word for freedom. We do obviously. The Empire is now anti-slavery because if you are a slave, you are only doing what your master tells you to do. Ergo, you're not pursuing your own virtue, etc. But just downing tools and doing sod all is not virtuous. Is the issue there? So you have heresy. You also have idolatry, which is subsuming your human will and destiny to an inhuman entity or force. This, for example, would be like deciding that you're going to raise up one of the magical Eternals as some sort of deity, which they aren't. You've got desecration, which is the removal of spontaneously created auras. Which is a whole other thing. You get spontaneously created auras when miracles or large communal acts of faith happen. Blasphemy, which is the denigration of paragons and path of virtue, which also includes promoting false virtues.
So is that like bad mouth in a paragon of or
yeah,
and then you could get in trouble with a inquisitor for.
And then abuse of powers, which is limited to like priests using their priestly powers to do bad things, or using the power of the synod to for non-virtuous things.
Could you say like charging people to do priestly stuff? Could that? I don't know. Actually, maybe not.
No, ultimately.
Well, I guess you could say like selling your synod vote would be.
I don't know actually, because like I think. Brass Coast and the League are quite big on money, and ultimately that's prosperous. It's like you want something from me, do this for me, and it's more like the classic example of abuse of powers is excommunicating someone without a writ of excommunication.
And what is a writ of? Is that just permission by the synod to do
it's
it?
where the synod all agrees this person should be excommunicated.
Yeah. Okay.
But then, so yes, you touched on inquisitors. Any priest can be an inquisitor. There are imperial titles for the virtue inquisitors, where there's one inquisitor per virtue, as well as one for the way and the imperial inquisitor. But basically, what an inquisitor is a priest who goes out and conducts inquisitions. Inquisitions are where you sit down with somebody and talk about what they did, and decide an appropriate response. Now, inquisitions can be good or bad. Since we're talking about crime, I'll focus on the bad one first. So in the case that you said, where you've got the priest of peace preaching peace and then dedicating someone to peace, you'd inquisit them and determine that they were preaching peace, etc., and charge them with heresy or blasphemy. And then you probably give them a condemnation. I've lost it. Where was it? Yeah. Which may be excommunication, for example, but equally the Inquisitor would also inquisit the person who got dedicated. And you might figure out, okay, this person just thinks that like we shouldn't be killing people willy-nilly, and peace with a lowercase p is a good thing. They didn't realise that they were going to be dedicated to a false virtue. In which case you might give that person a penance, which might be more go out and understand, like go on a pilgrimage and read about peace and why peace with a capital P is a bad thing, and also I'm gonna fine you for this. On the flip side, Inquisitors can find people who do incredibly virtuous things, and you do Inquisition to ask them about the incredibly virtuous thing you did, and then you can do, for example, a judgment of rewarding.
So, going back to Inquisition, mainly because this is going to answer a question by Ninja Fox. So, who does Inquisitions? Like you said, anyone can do it, any priest can do it. Is that a skill that has to be purchased via XP?
No.
Or is it literally role playing? You just go out talking to people like you've just explained.
So, any priest can do Inquisitions. Synod priests specifically. So, not all priests are Synod priests. If you have a congregation as your personal resource, it gives you votes in the Synod and the ability to raise judgments. So what a priest would do is they would raise a judgment of Inquisition that says, I summon Saren to this place at this time to talk about the thing that they did, and you're compelled to be there if you don't turn up. You don't have to turn up, but if you don't turn up, it's pretty much guaranteed that the outcome's going to be bad for you. It's like a court summons, I guess. And then you would sit down for an hour in that place with the inquisiting priest and the person being inquisited, and they'd ask you questions. And then at the end, the priest raises a second judgment that says, okay, I spoke to Saren, and I think that they did a bad thing, didn't do a bad thing, did a good thing. So, formal inquisitions are synod priests by doing things through the synod.
Yeah.
People do casual inquisitions where they just chat to people, but it like.
Could you almost say, would you say an inquisition is, so for example, Saren, my character's gone like, maybe he thinks he's gone down a path and he maybe thinks it's unvirtuous, or he's unclear on something that's happened. Is that when would he want to seek out someone, an inquisition, to be like, guide me or advise me? Or would that be maybe just chatting to a priest in general?
Good question. If you feel like your character is floundering in that way, I would say just chatting to a priest in general. If you feel like you've done a bad thing,
so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, would you say inquisitions are more down? Well, you said actually about good things as well, but
yeah, done a bad thing or a good thing. Approach a priest and get them to.
So maybe inquisitions are about big things, good or bad.
Yeah, generally I would say so.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Sort of leads to clemency as well, because if you do a bad thing by the letter of the law, when you stand trial, you can get a priest to do your clemency plea for you, where a priest would stand by and say, yes, this person, to use a really basic example, like stole a bunch of money from that bar, but they were doing it to actually stealing money from a bar is a really hard example to back up with virtue. But they were doing it to help fund this great work, or like there was ambition in why they did it, there was pride in why they did it, and that a good clemency plea might lessen the punishment you would get for doing a bad thing. Is basically what I was getting. Yeah.
Interesting. No, yeah, I've never really looked into false virtues or known much about them in field, so it's actually quite an interesting bit. Because I know it's a very bad thing, but it's probably potentially quite an interesting role-playing thing if you wanted a character to possibly go down that route and preach a false virtue and see how far they could get before they get in a lot of trouble. Which sounds interesting to me. I don't think I'd have the energy, but I would like to do it. But yeah, cool. And then Mark kind of mentioned it earlier. The last little tick is going to be, which again we've started talking about, the Imperial Synod.
Yes. So Imperial Synod is a governmental body that priests are a part of if they have congregation as your personal resource. Congregation gives you liao. Obviously, you can buy liao in the field, etc. So you don't need a congregation. But if you have it, it gives you liao, and it gives you votes in the synod and the ability to raise a judgment. What that means is, mechanically, functionally, there's a big old notice board, for all intents and purposes, in the synod, in the hub, where basically priests just come and stick their opinions on a post-it note and get people to vote for or against them, is the best way to describe it. But this is, I think I touched on it before, it might have been while we were on break, that the interesting thing about Empire and the way is it's dynamic. It's not, these were the teachings that were given to us long ago and they're written in stone and they never change. Instead,
it's allowed to evolve.
It's allowed to evolve, and part of what Synod does is evolve that. It's saying that it is saying that what it does is a priest might say that it is loyal to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example now. Any of you think of a
No, I'm trying.
example? Yeah.
We can come back to it.
Pride might be better. Like, it is a matter of pride that, and this is purely hypothetical, but like, winter markers should be drinking out of horn cups.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
hang on, he's on
assumption.
He's on something.
But you would, like, if you genuinely believe that, you would put that up in the Wintermark National Assembly, and people would, and other synod priests would say, like, is that a matter of pride? Isn't it a matter of pride? Do I agree with that statement? Don't I agree with that statement? And then you queue up and you speak to the civil service, and assign your vote one way or the other. It is worth noting, because I will kick myself if I don't say it. You can vote for or against, but if you don't vote, it is counted against. There are no abstentions. So the way the synod works is on a system of lesser majority and greater majority. A lesser majority just means that of all the people that voted, it got more in favour than against. A greater majority is of all the people that could have voted, it still got the majority. So it's not even like 3/4 of the people that voted, which is what we have, like, in this world, understand greater majority to be. It's, if there are 300 priests in Wintermark, that's a stupidly high number, but bear with me, 151 of them would have to vote for this judgment for it to get a greater majority.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if only 10 voted against.
if I don't know if I'm thinking of this. So I'm a priest, and like I've made that statement like so I go to the Wintermark Assembly. The reason why I do this is that so I can push this further. So if I go to Wintermark Assembly and go, I believe this should happen, or I believe this is true, and then the majority go, yeah, then what? Do I then go to like the synod and go, hey, this is what I believe is true, and then the synod vote on it, and they go, yeah, and then would you then go preach pride and go, it's a matter of pride for Wintermarket? Is that a way to kind of develop sort of priest, like sort of religious or virtuous game?
So the thing with the priest game is it is probably one of the most accessible ways to influence the plot, is what I would say. So like the synod is made up of assemblies. You've got an assembly for each of the virtues, like the ambition assembly, the pride assembly, and you've got an assembly for each of the nations, like the Wintermark assembly. Then you have like the Assembly of 9, which is all of the cardinals. But you choose what assembly to raise your judgment in, knowing that like the General Assembly is huge, and the Wintermark Assembly is. But you have assembly meetings where, like, I go to the Wintermark National Assembly and we talk about these are causes that we care about. I plan on raising this judgment and I want you to vote for it, etc. And then you go to the civil service in the hub and they give you a piece of paper and you write, I, Alfmund, submit this judgment to be voted on by Sunday at 2 p.m. And then you write your like spiel, saying whatever, and then people go to the hub, read the notice board of opinions, and vote on it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. It's not really a route or stuff I thought of before. Obviously, not being a priest, but saying how like it influences plot. Like I was just thinking of something in my head then. If you were a priest and go, you know, it's unvirtuous for a foreign enemy to have slaves, for example. This has probably already been covered.
Yeah.
You know, you could go, this is unvirtuous. Everyone go, yeah, I agree. And then you could turn around and go, well, that's why we should make this foreign power give up slaves. And then that would affect plot going forward, where now the Empire's going to take a stance.
So the more
going into dealing with slaves in a foreign nation.
Yeah, the more the larger the assembly that it passes in, and B, the more votes it gets. So if you get a greater majority in the General Assembly, it's going to make more waves than a lesser majority in the Wintermark Assembly and everything in between. But like, if you get something like a greater majority, you then get what's called a mandate, which is the civil service says, because this passed with a great majority, this information has then been passed out to priests across the Empire that we all agree that this nation doing slavery is a bad thing. And therefore the civil service identified that we could do a mandate phrased roughly like this, and that has the real power to change the plot. So then if you pass the mandate, which usually says something to the effect of, we send named priests with X doses of liao to preach that slavery is bad. If you pass that and you do gather, say it was 200 doses of liao, then you might get something like in the next wind of war or the next wind of fortune, the Empire could raid this foreign nation without having too much of a negative impact on X, Y, and Z, because we've identified that it's the virtuous path to do.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So it's an interesting way of going about it, and for priests out there, sounds like it could be quite a sort of achievable thing to do as a sort of a mini goal, like going out, taking a stance or something, and putting it to the assembly and see what happens.
Exactly.
I think it's a kind of a game, an in-game thing for my character was looking at utilizing this thing. I just didn't understand it at the time. Now you've said that, it makes sense to me. But it's sort of putting something to the National Assembly to kind of do something else. I don't talk about it. But no, it's interesting. Really. Again, not something I don't know, Mark, if you knew much about that, but I didn't know it at all, and it sounds actually quite interesting.
I knew mostly nothing of what we've talked about tonight. I've learned an extreme amount. So
sometimes when you get Winds of Fortune out, you'll get the little brown pop-outs that say it'll say a bunch of stuff, usually well, it'll say like what is broadly someone's opinion, and then it'll say at the bottom, character name, greater majority with X many votes in such and such assembly.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a judgment, and that is what has inspired that Wind of Fortune or whatever.
Nice. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's some at the moment based on the Wind of Fortune about Soma Suak. If either of you have read that, I don't know if you have.
I haven't read any Winds of. I've briefly read some of the Fortunes. I just need to sit down and do it, but
Yeah.
We probably should before the froth video.
Okay. Yeah, but maybe that's going to be the video where we just read them. Who
What?
knows?
What? We just silently stream you and me reading Winds of Fortunes and then going, oh yeah.
I'd watch it, yeah.
Talk about it. Have a breakdown of them all. But
We
hey,
could, well, I mean, we could read them out on stream, I guess.
or there's that really handy person that puts them into audio form.
Mm.
Yeah,
So we could just have an audio going and nod
and go
into it.
or mm.
Terrible. Maybe. Make good viewing.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think have we covered everything we wanted to cover?
I think more or less we've covered everything we wanted to cover,
Excellent.
which is nice because it's load. Wow, which is good.
It has. It's all unraveling now, though. I can tell.
I feel like there's tons of information that we've put across.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Felt good.
Ramble.
No, I
it
think so.
was Good.
I think it's been a very good ramble.
Good.
If a ramble at all. I'm just going to go through our questions to make sure we've covered them all. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering as we went today.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah.
I've noticed a few that I covered when we were going.
Yes, we've
If
covered.
there's any questions out there, then chuck them in there.
If you guys have any questions now is the time. We've officially entered question time territory.
I'd be really. I guess I'll waffle for a bit whilst you're looking at questions. Or
I have found one actually. It was one that Ed asked. Are you going to talk about heresy and cults? Which I think we brushed on briefly, but it would be cool to.
Well, I mean, we haven't
about
spoken
some
about
cults.
cults, have we?
We haven't talked about cults, no.
Have you had any experience with cults, Sam?
There's a limit to what I can talk about because obviously that's a big part of my game and other people's game, and I can't really out people.
Yes.
But a little bit. So when I used to be the Virtue Inquisitor for Ambition, and when I was doing that, I got pointed at what may have been a winter cult, but I can't really say more about whether it is or it isn't.
So they're definitely out there, is what you said.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So rather than when you asked about the Priest of Peace before, a Priest of Peace who's standing on the street corner yelling about peace would probably get arrested by the militia and executed pretty swiftly. So they tend to conduct their business far more quietly than that. Which is why you therefore get cults of people who are all about peace, but they have to do it secretly so they don't get executed. Equally, you get a lot of cults to Eternals, like idolatry cults. People who think that Blood on the Snow is, who is a Winter Eternal, the best thing and deserving of worship.
Super bad.
Super bad.
Don't do it.
Don't eat your friends, people.
To let the Inquisition know that you have at least.
Yeah, I mean, if you have done it, own up to it.
Yeah.
That's the lesson here. Yeah, I think.
Cults exist. They're obviously hard to find because they're cults, but
yeah.
I think it's just a lot to the priest game, isn't there?
Well,
I think we said going into this episode the religion side of the Profound Decisions game Empire is humongous because it's such a big part of the game, and I think I'd like to think we've got it across today and proven that it is a big part of the game and there's a lot going on.
absolutely. Like, I think the core thing to remember is that because the Empire is about the way, if you're a good virtuous citizen, then virtues should inform everything that you do, even if you don't know the virtues inside out, and you can't quote all of them or quote their tenets. Just try and do what you think is virtuous, rather than just what is cool.
I think
Obviously do what is cool, but
I think you said it earlier, Sam, with basically touching on what you just said then as well. Like, I feel like to me, it's a tool to give direction for you as a player and a character. Because you go into this world, like we've said it before, Mark. Like you go to Empire, oh, what do I do? Oh, I don't know. It's a big field, so many people everywhere, so much to do. Whereas if you break it down, there's 7 virtues. Pick one, and let that guide you as a character.
Yeah.
So I said, like, I want to try go wisdom as my character, but really it's prosperity. And when I do prosperity, I'm trying to earn money. I'm trying to spread wealth. We're trying to build great works and sinecures and stuff. And like I've almost gone that angle, and you kind of think, you can wake up on a Saturday morning at Empire and go, oh, what do I do today? Oh, well, let's try to be ambitious. I'm following ambition. Let's go that way. Let's see where that takes me. And ambition is probably an interesting one for kind of, I guess they're all basically are, but like just to go find something and do it. There's plenty out. If you just follow that mentality, you're going to find lots of game, which is, and obviously, like you said, Sam, like that's PD's designed it.
Yeah, I guess like a good way to, I don't know if I've got more questions, but to generally sort of sum it up, it would be to sort of, in the basis terms, like ambition is go do the thing, and loyalty is like help your friends, and prosperity is share wealth, and vigilance is like keep one eye open. What are the others? Courage is like don't shy away from things. Pride is shout about the thing that you're doing. Like they're all things that mean that other players are going to interact with each other rather than, which like is why all the false virtues are don't be horrible to each other, don't sit around and do nothing.
But I think go back to you saying like it interacts with people. I feel like the virtues you've just boiled them down to very simple just in that little statement then, but also so you can almost go real shallow or real deep. Like if you break it real basic, you've got something straight away to go on, or you can spend time going into it and you've got a lot more to go on. So which is great. It's not like you've got to read a 10-page wiki to just about understand what the prosperity virtue is. In its basic form, it's really understandable, and they all are, which again, it helps us as players.
Good question. I'll answer that
question. We've got a couple of questions lined up from Ninja actually. They asked earlier on, can anyone be inquisited? Or is it just generals, etc., or people who hold titles? As a lowly yo, I'm assuming yo folk, could I be inquisited?
So anyone could be inquisited for good or bad reasons. Generals and people with titles are obviously in the public eye more, so if they do a thing that is good or bad, then people are going to call that into question and ask that person be inquisited so that they have clarity on why that person did the thing that they did. But no, like anyone can be inquisited. As I say, if you're
I was almost inquisited once.
Yeah. If you're looking into a cult, like you'd just be inquisiting some winter mages or some spring mages or whatever. Like,
what about the Empress?
I believe the throne.
The throne,
I guess then, they would probably say buzz off, but then I guess you as a priest could go, you're not above.
The throne is still, expected to be.
That's an imperial title, isn't it? So interesting.
Right, there's some plot. When we get somebody to sit on the throne again.
Well, actually, that's a good point. So, like, not the throne per se, but as Inquisitor of Ambition, I was inquisiting all of the people running for the throne to be like, oh, so your ambition is to sit on the throne. Why do you want to do that? Why would you be the best throne? what would you have done differently to the last throw, and all of that sort of questions. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
basically interviewing them.
Definitely.
The second question, I was going to ask, similar to what Matt said, is it okay to focus on one or maybe two virtues rather than all of them? I don't feel
Oof.
like that's doable, which is a very good point. There are a lot of virtues. I don't think you could cover all of them with the same fervor. I think.
I guess I feel like I would argue you can. This might be really bad. I guess you could use all the virtues unless you were to dedicate yourself to one single virtue. But maybe that's really bad and Sam's about to say no, you can't do that.
I think you still need to. I'm sure Sam will tell us in a second, but I feel like you need to
Virtues guide
be
us.
trying to do all the virtues all the time.
So, it's a really good question, and is actually a listed
Don't say heresy.
schism, I think, or heresy, yeah.
Mhm.
Which is to say that, like, each of the paragons and exemplars is someone who has been identified as someone who is a shining example of one virtue. So part of doctrine is that you have to ultimately, if you're going to become a paragon or exemplar, your spirit ultimately has to dedicate to one. We don't have any, apart from maybe the first Empress, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Any paragons or exemplars who are paragons or exemplars of the way, and it's it's a bit of a thing to say that you must try and be all of them, or that being one thing exclusively is bad. That's the accessionist heresy.
Oh no. Thank God I didn't say this, I see.
Yeah. So, like, obviously, I'm dedicated to ambition, but I still try and have pride in the things that I do, and I still try and be courageous and loyal to my friends. But, like, ultimately, I'm always going to put being ambitious before any of that.
I guess you can. Yeah, so you want to follow the virtues. You could have your favorite. You could have a one that you're sort of a bit more focused on, but as long as you don't blindly follow that one virtue and ignore all others, then that's got to be okay, right?
Yeah. I think all it boils down to is every player within the setting has been brought up on the way, so everyone should have a good grasp on every virtue.
Well,
but
I guess different stages of your life, you might find you're sort of tuning into a certain virtue.
Oh, absolutely. You know, so, like,
when you're young, you might be ambitious, and then more settled and aim on prosperity. I don't know.
Yeah, just because I'm dedicated to ambition at the moment doesn't mean that I was dedicated to ambition in a previous life. Equally, people who have been dedicated to one ambition for most of their, I didn't mean ambition, one virtue for most of their character's life may have an experience that makes them think, actually, I care more about loyalty, for example. Just at was it E3 or E4? The Ambition Assembly had to rededicate somebody who already had a Strength 14 dedication to something else. So we had to get all of the Ambition Assembly to get together to overwrite the existing dedication so that they could become dedicated to ambition. So people change dedication all the time, but ultimately you still have to focus on one eventually, even if it's not in this lifetime. That makes sense.
Excellent. There you go. Well, I think that's probably a good time to call it.
Wrap it.
Yeah, like I said, I have learned an unbelievable amount of stuff this evening. Hopefully, everyone watching has too, and can start, really thinking or having the way sort of in the back of your mind, at least when you're going about your business at Anvil. I think that's probably the best way to if you're new to Empire, or haven't really thought too much about the religion game, then I think definitely starting out with just trying to be aware of it.
Virtues and yeah.
And if you ever have questions, then just find a priest and talk to them about it. They'll gladly talk your ear off.
And there's tons of priests, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Sam, thank you very much for coming on and doing this one with us.
Thank you
for having me.
It's been really, honestly, it's been really interesting to hear your take on everything to do with the way. It definitely has inspired me to try and be a bit more, because I can't lie, I'm so rubbish with the like trying to be religious in character.
Yeah,
because I'm not particularly religious in real life.
I hate the fact that I've now got this priest character in my head. You know, I've never thought about doing a priest character, and I'm like, oh, I've got to go do one. I've got to go make a character now. Like, that's all going through my head now. I was like, I could do this. I could do this. So, yeah.
I've succeeded.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as usual, we'll put this one up on YouTube once it's been through the ringer, and that'll go up on Wednesday. And then next time we'll have a little cheeky chat about Empire Froth.
Yeah, sort of Empire prep, and yeah, I guess then into the fray that is E1.
Yeah,
you can believe it.
Under 2 weeks now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not next
God,
weekend.
don't
Weekend
say
after.
like that. Oh, I'm not prepared.
You'll be home this time in 2 weeks, man.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that. Yeah, I know. Wowsy.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Much love. Until next time, have a good one. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.